Hi and welcome back to the Girl Gone London channel. If you're new here, my name is Kaylin. I'm a dual UK and US citizen, and today we're talking about tornadoes in the UK and a little bit in the US to compare the two. But I read the other day that England, not the entirety of the UK, but just England, technically has more tornadoes than the US when you base it off of land area. In fact, it's in the Guinness Book of World Records, with England experiencing 2.2 tornadoes per year per 10,000 square kilometers between 1980 and 2012. Compare this with these same exact stats in the US, and it's 1.3 tornadoes annually in the same area over the same period of time. Now, this is really due to the land size. It's sort of a quirky statistic that is technically true, but doesn't really reflect the entire situation. If you break it down further, you'll see that Kansas, a similar land area to Britain, has about 3 times more tornadoes annually, but then you have states like Alaska, 8 size the times of Kansas, that has very few tornadoes, so it brings down the overall average, despite America being much more associated with tornadoes, as evidenced by one of my favorite movies of all time, Twister. Another thing to consider when taking this statistic into account, as we'll learn later in the video, UK tornado reports are more crowdsourced from volunteer observers to a greater extent than in the US, which typically uses reports from professionally trained spotters and law enforcement. And in the US, the government-funded tornado research and tracking allows for more differentiation, good word, between microbursts and actual tornadoes. This is not a criticism of the UK resources, but it does reflect the fact that the UK doesn't necessarily need the extensive training and government funding towards these intense storm tracking abilities, because it doesn't happen that often when you look at the actual numbers. And the actual number in the UK is about 30 per year. So overall, this led me to wonder about tornadoes in the UK. Can we do a deep dive into extreme weather conditions as it exists in one of the places with some of the least extreme weather in the world? So first, let's talk location. Have you ever heard of Tornado Alley in the US? Tornado Alley in the United States is where many tornadoes occur across what we call the plains. It's states like Oklahoma, Kansas, and Nebraska. In the UK, the Tornado Alley is actually about 3 regions. All are in England. It's an area south of a line between Reading and London, an area southwest of Ipswich, and an area west and south of Birmingham. This is not to say that tornadoes can't occur outside of these areas in either country. They absolutely do, but this is where the majority of the activity is located. The strength of tornadoes in the UK and US is vastly different again, and I mean vastly. For comparison, the deadliest tornado in the USA was the Tri-State Tornado in 1925. This tornado killed 695 people. In the UK, the deadliest tornado happened in 1913, and the death toll was 5 people. Now, here are some pictures of US tornadoes up on the screen now. Compare this to pictures of UK tornadoes. They are still tornadoes, but they are not on the same scale of strength, devastation, or danger. In the US, the geography contributes to the massive nature of the tornadoes. Warm, humid air from the equator meets the cool and dry air from Canada and the Rocky Mountains, and boom, you've got yourself what is known as supercells or rotating thunderstorms. This is much less common in the UK. It lacks the heat and continental air masses to make these large storms. Instead, UK tornadoes are often formed from lines of storms along cold fronts. And when it comes to who researches and predicts the tornadoes, there's another difference, as I mentioned before. Of course, there are your classic storm chasers in the US, but the actual administration responsible for tracking and researching tornadoes is known as the National Severe Storms Laboratory. This is part of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It's a government entity, and as you can see from the website, has quite advanced tracking ability and funding for research. The UK equivalent isn't so much an equivalent. It's called TORO, Tornado and Storm Research Organization. But the reason I say it's not an equivalent is because it is a privately supported research body that serves the public interest, but it is not government funded. According to their website, work by many TORO staff is voluntary. It wasn't even until 1998 that they opened a membership scheme to help pay for the research and support the meteorologists in their quest to add to the scientific body of knowledge about tornadoes in the UK. If you're interested, they've got a fantastic page on their website detailing things like the largest tornado outbreak in the UK, which happened in 1981 with 104 tornadoes, as well as the widest tornado path, 900 meters in West Sussex in 1998, and lots of other fun facts. I say fun facts. It's not fun in the sense of the devastation and danger is not fun, but you get what I mean. The first tornado that was said to hit the UK actually happened in central London in the year 1091. Another interesting difference is that the UK and US both use different scales when measuring the strength of tornadoes. In the US, the F scale is used, so it would be an F0 to an F5. It's been changed and enhanced over the years, but this scale is used in North America, continental Europe, in most of the world. Again, we're not going to get too into the nitty gritty of tornado scales because technically now it's called the EF scale because it's enhanced, but all you need to just think of F. And there's 5 categories. So comparing that, before we all become tornado storm chasers in this video, in the UK, they use the T scale or TORO scale, which was proposed by Terence Meaden of TORO in the 1970s. It has 12 different categories. This makes it easier to differentiate smaller tornadoes with more categories to choose from, but it's not necessarily widely used outside of the UK. While the F scale or EF scale is based mostly on the level of damage left by a tornado to determine its intensity, the TORO scale claims to be based on the actual wind speed and not the associated damage, which does make sense in some ways because if you think about differences in maybe building codes, or geography, going just off of the damage might not be as accurate, but it is incredibly difficult to actually measure the wind speed of a tornado. So this scale does also end up sort of relying on surveys of damage as well. To finish, let's talk about the most expensive tornado in terms of damages in both countries. In the UK, it was the 2005 Birmingham tornado. It measured a T6 on the TORO scale, which is roughly equivalent to an F2 on the F scale. It ripped through the Sparkbrook area of Birmingham in the afternoon at wind speeds of 130 miles per hour. It lasted around 8 minutes and managed to cause £40 million worth of damage, tearing roofs off of homes, taking down over 1,000 trees, and definitely causing damage to buildings. In the US, the Joplin tornado in 2011 was the most costly tornado in American history in recent years. Unfortunately, this tornado struck on a Sunday evening in Joplin, Missouri, and it destroyed completely over 4,000 buildings, including 2 hospitals, and unfortunately, it killed 158 people. It was an F5 on the F scale, and the damages, keep in mind the UK one, was about £40 million. The damage in Joplin, Missouri was $3.71 billion worth of damage. So the next time you see the statistic about England having more tornadoes than the USA based on land size, now you have a lot more context to understand the differences between tornadoes, tornado tracking, and tornado devastation in both countries. I very much hope you enjoyed this video. I love researching extreme weather. I don't know. Again, I don't like the destruction or the devastation. That's terrible. But I am kind of a nerd for extreme weather, so possibly we'll do some more extreme weather videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.